You guys can make a case that this is the most important offseason in Houston Texans history. And I say that because they are this close to winning the Super Bowl. And if Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryans, the McNairs, and all of those in charge making the important decisions do not hit the right buttons this offseason, then they could lose out on that doorstep where they are to win the Super Bowl. Trevor Sikkema of Pro Football Focus is going to join us tonight. He was just at the Super Bowl. We're going to break down what they need to do, how they need to go do it, and also what's going to happen with CJ Stroud. You guys lock in, like the video. Make sure you guys also subscribe to the channel, Kickin It With Kunkel, and comment as well. And shout out to Socorro Tequila, the best tequila company out there. It is additive free. It is elite. It is just 3 ingredients. This is Kickin It With Kunkel. That's it right there. That's the stuff right there. Socorro Tequila. There's Blanco Reposado. There is Añejo, and it is legit. All right, let's get into this whole conversation with this Texans offseason because they were this close to, they had Jarrett Stidham in their way of getting to the Super Bowl if they were able to get past the Patriots, which they were not able to do. And my motto all season, by the way, was the offense had to suck less. The offense sucked majorly against the Patriots. CJ Stroud, obviously, he was not good enough. We're going to get into all of that, what you do with him here in a second. But first, shout out to Texas Vet 25, my man. Welcome to becoming a member here on Kicking It With Kunkel. You guys lock in as well. Texas Vet, send me a message, shoot me a message, and I can get you a bottle of Socorro Tequila as a thank you for being a member. Everyone else, become a member, subscribe to the channel, like the video as well. Woman. I'll put that on the screen. Never know. I think 90% of my viewers on the demographics on YouTube are men. So thank you, my woman. Can you say that? Like you say my man. Can you say my woman? That sounds wrong. It sounds like you shouldn't say that, especially as a married man. I have one woman, and it's not Texas Vet 25. But nonetheless, I digress. Thank you for being here, Texas Vet. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you chiming in and becoming a member as well. So, yeah, hit me up. Find me on social media. They're scrolling all over the bottom, and I can get you a bottle of Socorro Tequila. Just got to post it on social media and let the world know how good it is and how great I am as well. By the way, no longer drinking out of bottles. My mom got mad, so she bought me these. Kicking It With Kunkel coffee mugs. Very sweet of her. Thanks, Mom. CJ Stroud, this is where I lie with this situation, and there's a lot to get into. And then we're going to have Trevor on here in about 2 minutes. But I want to get your guys' opinion. What do you guys think should happen with CJ Stroud? I think, so ESPN, I'm going to tell you what I think should happen after I have Trevor on. But ESPN thinks that he's going to get a $56 million deal this offseason, $56 million per year this offseason. They also think Will Anderson is going to get a new deal this offseason, about $44 million, I think their projection was. I tend to believe that's true. I don't know about the CJ Stroud one. It's much more complicated than that. But Trevor Sikkema was just down at the Senior Bowl. He was just, he's everywhere, honestly. He scouts everything. He knows the game of football extremely well. He works for Pro Football Focus. Yes, the site that J.J. Watt hates. We talked about that as well. It's a great site. It's got awesome information. And this dude knows football as well as anybody. So with that being said, let's get into it. I do really like players down there a lot. I mean, they got last year Jaden Higgins out of that, Jalen Noel, I think.
That's true. Yeah, they did. They got both those guys. Yeah.
So let's start there then. How in the heck do the Texans fix their offense? And we can kind of go all positions right now. Offensive line obviously is number one.
Yes.
Do you think they're 28th overall? Is there somebody at that slot that they can get that can step in to be a day one starter, probably anywhere on the line except for left tackle and wherever Titus is going to be.
Yeah, I think there's plenty of flexibility for them with what they could do at offensive line there at the back end of the first round. I mean, again, it's not the strongest offensive line class. I know that some guys will obviously go ahead of them just because it's a premium position, so they'll go pretty early. But they'll have guys like Caden Proctor from Alabama might be there, who gives them like guard and tackle flexibility. Caleb Lomu, the offensive tackle from Utah, has a chance to be there at the back end of the first round. Max Ionicher, if they want to take a chance on a guy who's a little bit more athletic, who we got to see at the Senior Bowl, who was moving super well. I think he's great as a pass protector, still working on it as a run blocker, but as an offensive tackle, he's sort of got the ceiling that you look for. Monroe Freeling, Blake Miller, those guys are offensive tackle prospects that you probably feel pretty good about as well. And then guards like Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon, maybe Jennings Dunker from Iowa. Like, there's a lot of names as I go through mock drafts. I continuously do mock drafts that I think the Texans will absolutely have the ability to get a starting caliber offensive lineman there at the back end of the first round.
Okay. So that's that's part of the puzzle, is like the pieces are there. The other part is, hey, that's the good player. Let's take that guy versus a Kenyon Green. We've had this story here in Houston for a while now where Nick Caserio and his scouting department, they don't do offensive linemen well. They do wide receivers extremely well, and anybody that can play defense, they just happen to find the best player at all times.
Right.
The inability, like, is there someone they need to steer clear of on the offensive line?
I don't think so. I mean, so somebody that I mentioned before is like Jennings Dunker from Iowa, who I like his potential, but he's a little scheme dependent right now. So unless they really want to lean into running more like outside zone concepts, and he played right tackle at Iowa anyways, he probably is going to have to play guard at the NFL level. So there's a little bit of a position change there with him. I don't think he's got the footwork to be able to play at offensive tackle, but he's somebody who's a little bit scheme dependent in that regard. I think Monroe Freeling from Georgia is somebody who has potential, but would you feel great about like making him like a plug and play player? I'm not so sure about that. Again, like Blake Miller, I'm not worried about at all. The offensive tackle from Clemson. Caleb Lomu, even though he's a younger player, I'm not really worried about him. I think he's built like an offensive tackle you want them to be built. He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got all that stuff. Emmanuel Pregnon was so fantastic this year at guard at Oregon. I'd feel pretty comfortable, even though he was better like Dunker at sort of those zone blocking plays. He still had pretty good run blocking grades in like a downhill, more like man and gap scheme run blocking concepts as well. So I think that those guys, you feel pretty good about them no matter what. The popular one for Texans fans is going to be Caden Proctor from Alabama. Some people might look at it and say, hey, if you're getting Caleb Proctor, even though it's like, hey, is he a guard? Is he a tackle kind of a thing? If some people are going to say, hey, if you get him at the back end of the first round, it doesn't matter. If you're talking about him in the top 10, okay, now this conversation of like, if he's not a tackle, is he really worth it? That carries a little bit more weight. Some people will tell you it doesn't really matter as much once you get towards the back end of the first round. And then there's going to be other people that are just going to hold on to that. Like, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? He played tackle. Are you sure he could play guard at the NFL level? So there'll be some people that are advocates and some people that are skeptical about that. But I'd feel pretty good about Caden Proctor overall, just as an offensive line talent for the Texans. And so I wouldn't be really worried about him to put him in that category of like players that they should just steer clear of.
Well, the good news for the Texans is they have plenty of holes they got to fill. And I was shocked at how many holes they kind of, for lack of a better term, dumpster dived on last year. Right. I don't know if you remember their draft, but obviously they got Ariante Ursary, who looks like it could be certainly a serviceable left tackle in this league for a while. And they went and got Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll, which were luxury picks in my mind. I didn't understand it. I don't understand why you go back-to-back wide receivers when you need those offensive linemen. Do you remember that draft and their lack of aggressiveness? Like, what were your thoughts, and what are your thoughts now, like hindsight 2020?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what you said, where general managers generally don't want to do the, okay, we need this position so badly, we're going to overlook a player who's way higher on our board just to take a position of need. And so I think that the Jaden Higgins selection being their first pick sort of like went to that, where it's like, yeah, we have an offensive line need, but we feel pretty. Now, I think a lot of what goes into that is probably their faith in CJ Stroud, right? Where they were like, hey, CJ can make up for it. You know, the way that he's going to diagnose things, the way that he's going to take the next step forward. And CJ obviously did not have a great year this past year, especially down towards the end and in the playoffs. And so I think there's a little bit that probably goes into it, like the faith of their young quarterback getting a little bit better, being able to mitigate maybe some weaknesses along the offensive line, especially if he has the playmakers to be able to work with. And very clearly, the offensive weapons that he had to throw to, Nico Collins, the two rookies, Dalton Schultz, Christian Kirk, guys like that. I mean, the players were good enough to distribute the ball the way that they wanted to. The offensive line, it ended up being as bad as a lot of people sort of feared for them. And I think throughout the year, they got a little bit better. It was a little bit up and down, especially towards the second half of the season. But it's one of those drafts where I can't remember who was still on the board there exactly when they had picked Higgins, but
I think it was the guy that went to Detroit. I think
who was, you know what? Let's look this up.
I can't remember exactly, but like that's kind of, like I'm not the guy that's going to pretend to know everything about the draft and the offensive line. Like that's you. And
so they traded down. Let's see, where were they with the Giants when they traded?
Right, they traded back.
They traded down with the Giants. Which pick was this? I can't remember where they were initially with that one, because the trade spot probably matters here. Oh, I thought I had it. What is this? I cannot remember where they were initially.
The Chiefs. I think was it the Chiefs? And then the Chiefs picked someone.
It's always
I can't remember.
It's always so confusing where they were picking originally. But the guys where were they initially? Oh, they were 25.
Yeah, they were 25th, and they traded back to the Giants for the 34th.
Okay, so that was the Dart trade. Yes, they were the team that moved back with Jackson Dart. People probably yelling at us listening to this podcast because they probably figured it out before we did. But at that point, that does make this conversation very interesting, because at that point, Josh Connerly was still on the board.
Yep.
And Josh Simmons were still on the board.
Yeah, Simmons went to Kansas City. Yep.
Those guys, I would have stayed at 25 and taken one of those guys. Like even with the fact that, okay, when you trade back better picks, or I should say more picks, you get more darts to throw at the dartboard. Those two guys, I feel like, were good enough. And Houston's offensive line need was so dire that I like Josh Simmons a ton. Obviously, he had the personal issue this past year, and then he had some injuries that he was dealing with. But at the beginning of the season, he looked like he might be a rookie Pro Bowler. That's how good he looked. And I think the Kansas City's got to be happy with what they've seen from him on the field. I thought the same with Connerly, who really struggled, I think, throughout the first half of the season. But when I watched him at the back half of the season, I thought that he was one of maybe even the best offensive tackle from that rookie class. And that includes guys like Will Campbell, guys like Armand Membu, guys like Kelvin Banks Jr. I thought Josh Connerly was as good as any of those guys, maybe even better. So that, sort of getting back to the question that you asked, is like, I would have taken one of those guys. I would have taken one of those guys at number 25. I wouldn't have traded down at that point, because those players, even though I was a little bit lower on Connerly going into the draft, I was not low on Simmons. And I feel as though both of those guys, if you took either of them, you'd feel a lot better about where your offensive line is today.
And you bring up something that is a hot topic button here and with me. So Nick Caserio, and I understand you don't draft for need, like you were kind of talking about. You always want like the best player. But when you are fine-tuning a roster, going for a Super Bowl, I think you got to start going for, like Nick Caserio famously said, I don't even know what draft for need means. I don't even know what that means. Like, okay, yes, you do. Second of all, when I covered the Hornets, I talked to Mitch Kupchak about this when they were going for the draft. I was like, what are you kind of looking for? He's like, dude, well, I need just anyone. I don't care if it's a point guard, a shooting guard, a power forward, a center. It doesn't matter. I just need talent. Like, that's how bad they were. That's not the Houston. That's not the Texans. The Texans are like this close to a Super Bowl, and we saw that they were this close to winning a Super Bowl if the offense, as I was saying all year, sucked less. If they sucked less, that's how good the defense was. So, like, you've got to draft for need at a point to fine-tune your roster eventually, like, don't you?
Yeah, I think that you do. I think every general manager will tell you that they don't want to draft for need.
And I get it. I get that.
Sometimes, though, I wonder if that's just, a little, and I'm not just saying Caserio, like I wonder if that's just a little bit of lip service. Is like it's an answer that you give at owners meetings and the combine and things like that, because you don't want any other teams to know maybe what you're focusing on, because you don't want to ever give yourself an opportunity to not have a trade down chance with some teams, or like whatever it is. There are some front offices and coaching staffs that just don't want to give away any information at all, no matter what. Like they just say, which is
definitely Nick, and which is completely fine with me. But he backed it up with 2 wide receivers, and it was
that's true. That is very true. So, but there are some that absolutely mean it, where they operate as if they're going to be around for a long time, and I think that there's sort of pros and cons to that approach. Right? The pro is that you are building a team that you think is sustainable for the long term, not just for the short term. But the con is that we know that that's basically never the case, that you're around forever. There's most general managers aren't. So I think for Nick's case, this year was a little bit of them maybe biting off more than they can chew with that philosophy. Because I can't remember which phrase you used at the beginning when we started, but we looked at their offensive line, and it was like they were just bringing in a bunch of guys that they were bargain bin shopping, essentially, for guys who had been.
They started someone named City So. It went so poorly, Trevor. It lasted 9 plays, bro. That's an entirely different conversation of coaching. How do you? It's not. It's like you look at each other's timeline, like, wait, that's the guy we said? Like, we all agreed on that for 9 plays?
And it's, I think that you can bargain bin shop at certain positions. I think like linebacker, sometimes you can get away with it. Running back, you can sometimes get away with it. Tight end, depending on the type of player you have. Sometimes defensive tackle, and like sometimes safety, you could kind of get away with it.
Or one offensive lineman.
You can't, right. You can't get away with it at quarterback, certainly, offensive line, corner, and pass rusher. Like there's just the good ones in those categories never become available. Like I think that a good way to understand what positional value is just look at the league, look at a position, and say, when did these guys ever become available via free agency or trade? Don't talk about the draft, because you could draft these guys, obviously, depending on what spot you're in. Teams never give up shutdown corners. They never give up good offensive linemen. They never give up on good quarterbacks. Certainly, they almost never give up on good pass rushers. And you can even sometimes throw wide receiver in there, although we've seen that wide receivers can sometimes become available. But like Teams lie with what they tell you. They won't lie with their money. They never will. They're never going to spend money in a way to get you off of their trail or to make you think one thing while they really think the other. Teams never lie with their money. And with that being said, you can't bargain bin shop at offensive line, specifically the way that you just said it right there, the whole offensive line. That if you want to go on the clearance rack for like one guard, maybe 2 interior offensive linemen. Okay, like some teams, it's a competitive salary cap league, so I think that that's going to be the case for a lot of teams. But for the most part, you've got to be able to draft and develop highly talented offensive linemen, or you're just always going to be left on the outside looking in when it comes to guys that are good enough at those positions.
And then you throw in a new offensive coordinator in Nick Caley. I don't know how much you watched of the Texans this year, how much you know about Nick Caley. I said it was the wrong hire from the start, not because there was anything wrong with Nick, but not all offensive coordinators are treated the same. Not every position is the same. Like some are trying to win a Super Bowl. Some have 2-3 years to kind of learn on the job, figure it out, and become a better offensive coordinator. Grow your scars. Like Joe Brady, perfect example. Like when he was called up by Matt Rule, that team was nowhere near trying to win. He had never been in the NFL. He gets fired, goes to Buffalo. Now he's the head coach, long story short. Nick Caley's coming on a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl right now. Like right now.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of his scheme and this play calling? If you watched them enough, if you didn't, don't feel like you got against them.
Yeah, I spent a lot more time watching their defense than I did their offense, so I can't speak specifically to the scheme of what they were doing, but I will just say that the regression of CJ Stroud is the biggest, glaring part of all of this, right? I mean, how successful an offensive coordinator's tenure is with the Houston Texans right now, the way that they're currently constructed, has everything to do with how CJ Stroud is playing. And Stroud got worse. Now, I don't know if that's all on him. I'm not going to say that like Stroud himself is blameless in this regard, but very clearly, whatever was going on the offensive side of things was not good enough. The offensive line, we knew probably wasn't good enough from a talent perspective, but CJ also looked way worse. I mean, there were times in that playoff game specifically where it's like, dude, you're trying to give the game away here. Like that
playoff game was tough.
It was crazy to watch that because I think so highly of Stroud, not just as a talent, but also of like how he sees the game. And it just looked in that game, that was such a far cry from what we have seen from Stroud at Ohio State and what we've seen from him in the NFL, that it was just like, dude, he's mentally broken. Like whatever he's trying to see, whatever they're trying to get him to think about before the snap and post snap, like it is not clicking. It is not working. He had that wide eyes, deer in the headlights type of look during the playoff game where you just go, man, he looks broken. And I think that that's that even more than the scheme, which I always felt was always going to have to change a little bit throughout the year. Like I felt as though this team was more of like a zone rushing team early on. And then they kind of like leaned a little bit more towards the power game because Woody Marks was a little bit better at that. And he had better rushing numbers, more efficient running numbers. Yeah, right. But that's the exact thing is like they tried to do that. But if you don't have the offensive line to run what you want to run, it almost doesn't matter like what the scheme is supposed to be. You just don't have the guys up front to do it.
Yeah, and to that point, like every position you mentioned that teams don't give up on or like good guys are all guys that really everything's scheme driven. I get that, but like have to win one-on-one battles. Like you got to be good. Like you just have to be good yourself. What do you think happens with Stroud? I think my opinion is they pick up fifth-year option, no new deal this offseason. ESPN predicts I forget what 4 years, something that ended up being about $56 million. That's what they're predicting. I think Mulligetta and Stroud had all the cards in their hands going into the year, lost a few cards, and now probably won't get 56 if they go for a new deal. So Texans pick up that 5-year.
Yeah,
what I think.
I do think the Texans pick up the 5th year. I think that they would be smart to do so. Like, I think that the Panthers are going to do the same thing with Bryce, right? I think that when you look at both of these quarterbacks, it's like, yeah, they've shown you moments, but we're seeing around the league right now, it's advantageous to get ahead of the quarterback market. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt that it has value, but you can also get in situations like Miami's currently in with Tua, like the Cardinals are currently in with Kyler, where, okay, you got ahead of the curve when you signed both of those guys, but they're not good. Like, and that's, I think that sometimes that element gets lost in the business side of things. It's like you want to sign them ahead of the curve because you think that they will be good, or hopefully because you know they will be good, and then you are playing on a better contract. They're playing on a better contract for you than you would think that they would be able to get if, say, that they were able to hit the open market today. It's the same sort of idea of having a young franchise quarterback on a rookie contract. It's having that advantage with where their market could be versus where you have them at a cost-controlled thing. But that cost-controlled point only matters if they're good. And if they're not, especially with a quarterback contract, even if you miss on a few years, if you move on from this guy, I mean, sometimes the dead cap hits can be debilitating for what you want to do. So I think that Stroud is more likely to get a new deal than, say, Bryce is. But at this point in time,
Bryce played pretty like Bryce is trending up, it looks like.
He is from where he was previously, but I do not see them, given how inconsistent he's been as a whole over the last 2 years. I don't think he'll get a new deal this offseason. I think of the two, I would say that Stroud is more likely to get a new deal, although just because of how poorly he played in the postseason, you kind of have to see it a little bit again from him this year, and then hopefully go into negotiations the following year with Stroud.
Back to what you're talking about, Stroud and his, deer in the headlights type look is like, that's what happens. One, when the scheme is what it is, I don't think he really loves it. And two, he never trusts his offensive line. And that adds up. Like his pressure rate from his rookie year went from 35% to 38% to 41% last year. Like no quarterback is going to be consistently good with that pressure rate. If you don't fix the offensive line, just forget about it. It don't matter. No, I don't care what you call.
Yeah.
You're not going to be good.
Yeah, I think that I talk about this all the time. A team's job is not done once they draft a young franchise quarterback. In fact, I would tell you that the job is just beginning. It is then your job over the next 2 years specifically to surround that player with enough to where in years 3 and 4 of that rookie contract, you are in a legitimate winning window. You have them on a cost-controlled rookie deal, and yet they are playing well, and the team is playing well around them to where you actually have 2 years where you are hitting the gas pedal with your cap space everywhere else on your team while they are playing well. But the moment that you draft a young franchise quarterback, those next 2 years are the most important years of your tenure as a team builder and a general manager. And I would say that for the Houston Texans, they have obviously built one of the best defenses in the NFL. They obviously have great playmakers to work with, but unfortunately, their offensive line is not good enough to get the job done. So thankfully for them, they are close in most areas. I think the defense is Super Bowl caliber. I really do.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how quickly can you turn around the O-line for this team.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, okay, you nail the draft. They're still rookies. Like, there's still going to be learning curves and ups and downs. You mentioned the cap. Do you think the NFL ever figures out a way to alleviate some of that pressure from the quarterback position specifically?
What do you mean? Almost
I don't know, 50% of it goes towards the cap, 50% doesn't, because it kills you. You just can't build really good teams, and it's for everybody.
I don't think they're going to mess with it. I think they're very comfortable letting capitalism kind of run its course in that regard. And it's just hey, whatever you're willing
with the salary cap's capitalism.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying though. It's sort of, they're okay with these teams operating under hey, and I don't think I guess that would, it's interesting to think about it like that, but I don't believe the NFL is ever going to meddle in that regard. The salary cap keeps going up and up and up and up. And these salary cap gurus on a lot of these teams are so smart about how they get ahead of things. And I just feel as though they're just letting the free market within a salary cap, of course, do whatever it is supposed to do. And whatever you think a quarterback is worth, that's what those guys are going to get. And then other teams are just going to have to react off of that.
Who in this draft is maybe not, someone like me has never heard of, the casual fan hasn't heard of, that you think keep an eye on this guy. He's going to be a stud and maybe even available later.
So at any position you're saying?
Yeah, wherever.
I mean, for the Texans specifically, I really will. One of the names that I shouted out that I just don't think is getting enough love is Blake Miller, the offensive tackle from Clemson. I really don't think that he's getting enough love. This has been at least 3-year, perhaps even 4-year, if I'm remembering correctly, starter for Clemson. He's got the length. He's got the overall size. He's played right tackle. He is such a patient pass protector. He's gradually been putting on weight and strength over the last 2 to 3 years to where he's getting a little bit stronger. Could he be a little bit more imposing in the run game? Yes, but I think that could still be coming. And I think that we're talking about a guy who I really, really like as a right tackle prospect. Like, he is somebody that I don't think people are talking about enough. Randomly, I know the Texans don't need this position, but AJ Halsey, the safety from LSU, it's a really good safety class this year, but I think that he's getting underrated with a lot of good safety prospects out there. There's Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo. There's Caleb Downs from Ohio State. There's Dylan Thieneman from Oregon, but I think that AJ Halsey is right there in that conversation. I just don't think that he's getting the love that he's deserved. So those are two random ones that I think stands out. Oh, and then the last one. Here's one more because I was just thinking about this for the Senior Bowl. Sam Hecht, the center from Kansas State.
Yeah.
I didn't know a ton about him going into Senior Bowl week. He started for the final 25 games of his college career when he was at Kansas State. Really solid overall PFF grades. It is sort of an up in the air center class where there's not, I mean, Connor Lew from Auburn sort of went into the year as the de facto top center, but then he tore his ACL early in the year. And so he's sort of dealing with that. And you got to think about that with the scouting report. I watched Sam Hecht in person at the Senior Bowl. I can count the amount of reps that he lost on one hand the whole week, all 3 days of practice. And that's including one-on-one drills that are very focused on the defense being able to win on a consistent basis. His grip strength is amazing. His core strength and balance and footwork are fantastic. He neutralizes and anchors super well. He handles power very, very well. He's got the footwork to be able to mirror guys on the interior when they're faster, more finesse rushers. I was so impressed with him. Well, I think that he could be the best center in this class. And I think that we're not talking about. Where can you get him? So I would have told you before the Senior Bowl, you probably could have got him like early day 3. Now, after the Senior Bowl, I think that he's probably firmly a day 2 pick. I don't know if he's going to start to get like second round buzz, but like if you could get Sam Hecht in the 3rd round, I think that you're getting a starting caliber NFL center in the 3rd round.
Damn, they could use that. They need a center desperately in Houston.
Yeah. So that's the guy that I would shout out.
Hey, do you guys at Pro Football Focus have a dartboard with JJ Watt's face on it?
No, actually, funny. But now, actually, funny enough, we have a homage T-shirt, a JJ Watt T-shirt that we hang up in our PFF studios, just so he knows, hey, we love JJ Watt. We love JJ Watt around here, and we would love to have JJ Watt on the show and talk a little football. But I don't know, doesn't seem like he's too into that. Maybe one day.
How have you guys? You and I talked one night at length over a couple beers and a whole bunch of amazing wings at Kickback.
Knockback Nats.
Damn, are you still in Cincy?
So I am not currently, but I go to and from Cincy all the time because that's where the PFF Studios is. So okay. you better believe that I've had my fair share of Knockback Nats this season.
So that place is so good.
Yes,
so good. But you and I talked about the grading system. You guys are kind of always working on it. Have you guys made any changes?
No, I mean, we make changes and tweaks, and I would just say that we have a full review process that happens every offseason. Now, I'm not a part of the data collection team, and so even if they make little changes here and there, I might not be privy to exactly like, hey, like we're going to start sort of counting this as more of a +1.5 instead of a +1.0, kind of a thing. Or they have coaches and they have former players that they'll bring in the off season. And those guys will sort of run through tape with some of our senior game grading people, and they'll sort of go through it and they'll talk about assignments and responsibilities and, what's expected of a player here and what constitutes a good job if they sort of like are in this alignment and have this responsibility. And we have years and years and years of data and tape and things like that, where we have such a solid baseline of all of those things. It's not like coaches are coming in for the first time, last offseason, and they're like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. Actually, if you're the inside linebacker on this play, we know almost all of that already, but the game of football is changing. And so we always love having coaches who have coached recently, whether it's at the high college levels or at the NFL levels, be able to walk us through exactly what might be asked of different defenders or offensive players in certain schemes and everything like that. So I don't have anything off the top of my head, but I know that's something that our data collection team goes through every offseason to make sure that we're doing the best job that we possibly can to give out these grades.
Tell the people where to find you, brother.
Pro Football Focus, PFF.com, the PFF YouTube channels where you can see all of our shows. And then for anybody out there that is obsessed with the NFL draft, the NFL Stock Exchange YouTube show as well, where myself and Connor Rogers are talking NFL Draft 365.
Trevor's the man. Always good to get him on the show. I've known Trevor for handful of years now. When I was in Charlotte, that's where he is now. I had him on my show out there when I was with Fox, and dude knows football as well as anybody. All right, I want to get to some of the comments and some of the super chats. We will skip the line. If you're a member or you super chat, you skip the line. Yeah, shout out to NFL Stock Exchange. Scott, you're the man. I appreciate you. Super generous. Love you. Caserio hasn't done a good job evaluating O-line talent. I don't know if you got in here late, Scott, but I mentioned that at the early part of that conversation. Ursery is the only starting O-lineman he has drafted in 5 years after drafting 7 offensive linemen. You're 100% right. And if you missed it, I'll kind of recap it for you since you super chatted. So I asked Trevor who the prospects are that you want to really look at if you're going for the offensive lineman, and he named them, and I said, all right, that's one thing. And then the other thing is to figure out who the guy is that's going to be good. And that's where Nick Caserio and his scouting department, to be fair, it's not all Nick Caserio. It's the scouting department. Like right now, the scouting has been done. That scouting department has watched all these guys throughout college. They have written up their reports. D'Amico Ryans has gotten that in the last couple of weeks, and Nick Caserio probably a little bit more recently, because he doesn't have not as much going on as D'Amico, but D'Amico's obviously head and shoulders just dove into the middle of the season. Caserio obviously working on the roster throughout the season as well, but can also have time, I think, to look at some of the prospects and some of the reports. I might be wrong on that, but nonetheless, Caserio and Ryans don't really look at the scouting reports of draft prospects in detail until now. Then they'll get more into it when they're at the combine and meetings and workouts, etc. So, like, a lot of this is done by the scouting department, and not a lot of people talk about that because there's not a face to it that you can point to and say that guy needs to be fired or there needs to be change over there. But a lot of these guys have already been scouted. A lot of the opinions necessarily haven't been formed, but that hard, heavy lifting, that work, that's already been done. Texas Vet, you're a member. I know that you had some in here. 100%. And we brought that up. The kid out of Kansas State sounds like he'll be available, at least at a point, for the Texans to draft. Whether or not they actually draft him or not, or he's available when they're on the clock is something completely different. But yes, completely agree. The need is new center. They have got to get a new center. And they could get, as many as 3 new offensive linemen. But like I told Trevor, they're going to need to get offensive linemen that are ready to play like right now. And even then, they're still rookies. They're still going to have growing curves and mistakes. Like Ariante Ursery was hardly flawless throughout the season, which understandable. He grew into a pretty good offensive lineman at the left tackle spot. And that's really hard to do with some of the guys that he went up against this season. So they're still going to have growing curves. Okay, so CJ Stroud's contract, ESPN predicted, and I put out, if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok as well, you can see the videos that I put out. But ESPN predicts that he's going to get a new contract this offseason. I think it's Graziano that predicted that. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I disagree. There's arguments for why that's a good idea, because if you go $46 million, you get it ahead of the curve. I believe the highest paid quarterback right now is Dak Prescott at 56 per year, 60 something per year. Let's see. I believe that's who. I know it's Dak, 60 million a year. Joe Burrow, 55. Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Trevor Lawrence, and Jordan Love, 55. Trevor Lawrence, 55. Trevor played his ass off this year. I know a lot of y'all hate him, but played really well. Tua, 53, and he's not even good, not even going to be on the team anymore. Ah, man. So if you give, I'm going to get this sentence out eventually, but once I get all the salaries up on my screen, then I will. But if you give CJ Stroud $46 million a year, what you're doing is you're getting ahead of the curve. You're getting ahead of the market, and that's what Nick Caserio loves to do. I think he will do that this offseason with Will Anderson Jr., and he did it 2 years ago, 2 off seasons ago. I think it was 2 off seasons ago with Nico Collins. He got ahead of the curve, and that's the opposite of what Jerry Jones does in Dallas. The other team in Texas, he did this with Dak Prescott. Now he's the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. He lost Micah Parsons because he didn't think it was worth it. He could have gotten ahead of the curve there as well. So the argument to sign Stroud to that $46 million as predicted by ESPN is that you get ahead of the curve and you don't have to pay. I don't know who's coming up, but you don't have, those numbers only go up. They only get bigger and bigger. Let's see, player rankings. Contract APY per year. So Dak, yeah, okay, full ranks. So if you give him 46, that puts him tied with Deshaun Watson. Okay. And $100,000 behind Kyler Murray, who's getting $46,100,000. And that puts him ahead of Patrick Mahomes, who's getting $45 million. Because remember, they signed that deal a long time ago, and it was a pretty squirrely deal. Matthew Stafford, $42 million, puts him ahead of Geno, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields. Like those guys are 20, 33 million, that area. So $46 million. I mean, I'm not going to tell you it's a bargain. It's a steal or something like that, because it's not. It's a whole lot of money, and it screws up with your salary cap significantly. But I mean, Brock Purdy's getting $53 million, Jared Goff $53 million. I mean, that's just so much damn money. So if you don't sign him, which I think is what's going to happen, even though I could talk myself into this one way or the other, if you don't sign him, then you make him play. He pick up his 5th-year option, and then he plays 2026 on his rookie deal, and it's a prove-it year. You go out there and you force him to prove it. And if you're a CJ Stroud, you say, okay, well, coming into this year, he probably had a chance to get somewhere between $55 and $60 million a year. Didn't have the greatest season, had a really bad postseason. So now he lost some of that potential money. So if you're a CJ, you say, all right, you're going to improve the offensive line, and the offense is going to, you assume, get better. You assume the offensive line is going to get better, and you assume that the guys are going to know this offensive scheme better, so that maybe you'll perform better. You have a better running game, and if so, then you will get more than $46 million a year. So maybe CJ's like, yeah, let's not do a deal, because I think I can get up to $51, $52 million a year, even more than that if he has a big time year. And if he doesn't play well next year, then you picked up that 5th-year option, and I believe that 5th-year option, as well as next year's, I believe it's about $23.5 million. I think that's what it would be. Something around that for the 5th-year option. Right now he's getting $9 million a year, but I believe his 5th-year option would be $23 million. I think that's right. So I think both sides might want to say, all right, let's not negotiate a deal right now. Let's see what happens after year 4. And frankly, the Texans want to pay him. The Texans want CJ Stroud to deserve $55 million, $60 million, because that means he played his ass off and probably went pretty deep into the postseason. And you're going to get better around him. So Will Anderson Jr., whatever he wants, he's going to get. And Nick Caserio is going to get ahead of that contract as well. Sarah, excuse me. You brought up something about the safeties. I think Jalen Reed is going to be that other safety. And they cannot draft safety depth early in this draft. You want to go late, fine, like whatever. But you can also get something else a little bit later. I'd rather get cornerback depth. Trayvon Smith was not good for them this year. The kid out of Ohio State I had on the show, can't remember his name. He obviously was signed to the 53-man, then got cut mid-year. He's been in town actually working out a whole bunch too. So H-Town Venom with some hate. You guys just got to get the emotion out of this. You got to understand, let's say at worst, he's the 20th ranked quarterback in the NFL. Okay? Who's making Justin Fields is getting $20 million at the 20th most in the NFL. Baker Mayfield 19th most in the NFL, $33 million a year. Like, that's not happening. That means there's 20 guys on planet Earth that can play the quarterback position. Like, it's just supply demand. That's all it is. Supply and demand. And CJ Stroud is better than most. And he's going to get a contract at some point by someone. I don't think he likes this system. I don't think the system fits him very well. I think Nick Caley was a detriment. I think the offensive line was a detriment. I mean, if you don't have a good system, you don't have good play calling, and you don't have a good offensive line, no quarterback is going to be consistently good. He had happy feet. He never trusted his offensive line. His offensive line never gave him a reason to trust him. And you're not going to win games like that. And when it looks bad, it's going to look really, really, really bad. But they also have enough talent in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, who they never utilized properly enough. They have Nico Collins, and Woody Marks came on late, and CJ and Dalton. So you have enough guys, enough talent to have games where you're like, damn, this looked really good. And I think Nick Caley looked better. Nick Caley had a better back end of the season than he did to start, for sure. He was really bad to start the season. But he also had a lot of room to grow. He went from really low to average, maybe some games above average. But I think there were some games where he called good games. But I never thought that they won games because he got guys in the right position consistently. I think that defense just was so good. And that's what's really frustrating about the way they lost is all season long, all off season long last year, all the time. This was my motto. Texans offense. Suck less. Like you don't have to go out and score 35, 40 points a game. You don't have to score 31 points a game. I don't know what they ended up with, but there were obviously outliers. And D'Amico wants to get in on this, like the goal is to win the game. Yes, the goal is to win the game, but you also want to be good against good teams, not just winning against good. Like, you want to know, because you're not playing the Raiders and the Cardinals and the 49ers and the Ravens and the Titans in the playoffs, the teams that you beat up on. You're not playing them in the playoffs, so it's not your measuring stick. That's not like, I just watched the Miracle documentary on Netflix about the Team USA that beat USSR, which, by the way, watch it. Fantastic. So freaking good. And they lost. They took a trip at an exhibition and they played Norway, I believe, and they got their ass handed to them. And Herb Brooks, the head coach, kept them on the ice and skated their ass off because they played like crap. Or did they win but played like crap? Whatever it was, it's the notion that you can't play poorly against good teams and then play really well against bad teams and act like a win is a win is a win. They're not all equal. Like, it's just crazy. You can't be doing all that stuff. Chris, I appreciate you chiming in on X. Come on over to YouTube. It's a better viewing experience. You can hit up the super chat. You can become a member and a subscriber to Kickin' With Kunkel. I appreciate everybody who has done that, by the way. Any more super chats that I got to hit? I just thank you again to Nomad Scott. Do you move around the country a lot or the world a lot? Or are you just like a nomad on YouTube? You just like watch a whole bunch of stuff. But I appreciate everybody supporting. Oh, and I want to address this as well with so if you get rid of CJ Stroud, what are you going to do? Davis Mills, stop with that. There's not a metric on earth. There's not a stat in the world that says that Davis Mills is a better quarterback than CJ Stroud. He's a significantly less quarterback than CJ Stroud. Yes, he got some wins. So did CJ. CJ got more wins, if that's your metric. But Davis Mills is a very good and very fine backup. But he's a backup quarterback. He is not a quarterback for 20 games. In a small sample size, Davis Mills can be very competent and very good. That's what he is. CJ Stroud can do it for a longer period of time. I agree he needs to level out and play a little bit better consistently, but they got to support him around him. I thought Trevor made a really, really good point that when you get your franchise quarterback, and he thinks very highly of Stroud, your job doesn't stop there. You can argue that it starts there if you're a general manager and head coach, because now you got to put the pieces around him, and you got to do it quickly by year 2, which was last year, or year 3, because that's when they're on their rookie deal. So now this is why I say this could be, and arguably is, the biggest offseason in Texans history, because you're this close. I mean, you're this close to winning the Super Bowl. It's not an exaggeration, but we did see the gap that there was, because when the offense goes bad, it is bad. I mean, lose a game, knocked out of the playoffs in embarrassing fashion, bad. That's not the case with the defense. The defense had to be perfect because the offense was that bad. Now, if the offense can just lift the floor a little bit, I'm not saying their ceiling has to be through the roof. It doesn't. They just need to lift that floor a little bit so that if they do have a really bad game, the defense, if they're playing well enough, you still can win. Cecil, you're late, bruh. I'm going to wrap it up here in a little bit, though, so you can go back and watch the interview with Trevor Sikkema. It was a great conversation. Dude knows so much football. Davis Mills will start for a team next year and be average. Dude, that is just – it's so not – that's a really bad take, dude. You want to get a second or third round pick for a backup? You guys in the comments handle Steven Scott. That is – I feel like I'm on – what do I have in my hair? Okay, the camera does not need to zoom in on that. Jeez. Chill, bro. What is that? Probably some spit up from my daughter. Nomad Scott, since you hit the super chat, I'll pop you up. I travel a lot for work, 1 week out of the month, and yes, I am also. My man's everywhere. CJ's never been better than an average QB in any season. His rookie year was an average year, and it was his best year. Like, what is okay? Let's have that conversation. What's average? 15? 16? Okay. Guess what? 16th best quarterback in the NFL is getting paid. Yep, that's Matthew Stafford from a contract standpoint, $42 million a year. Patrick Mahomes right above him. Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts, 14 up to 11. So, okay, great. Average, right in the middle, getting paid. You guys got to think about this just like you do in America, or I guess anywhere. Supply demand, that's all it is. How many quarterbacks are in the world? How many of them can play at an elite level? How many elite quarterbacks are in the league? 4? 3? But come on. He's not 15th, though. This isn't. So then where is he, Mike? Where do you think he is? I don't think that they should pay him this offseason. I think they want to make him play well in his 4th year next year. And I also think CJ believes in himself enough that he wants to play well and get more money after his 4th season. So I think they pick up his 5th option. I think the offense is also constraining Stroud. This offense is not good for Stroud. Nick Caley's not good for Stroud, and the offensive line isn't good for Stroud. It's not good for any quarterback for that matter. So and I'm not going to convince Stroud haters of that, but that's why I try to take emotions out of all of this, because the offense was not very good with Davis Mills. They had like 32 yards in the second half against the Bills. Like, it's horrible. Yeah, he had a big play. You don't win the Chiefs game, to Nick Casario's point in his press conference, without CJ Stroud. He was that damn good. I'm not telling you that you give him $50 million a year. I'm not telling you give him a contract this offseason. I think if you're CJ, you bet on yourself. And if you're the Texans, you make them prove it. That's it. So we'll find out. All right, I appreciate everybody who chimed in tonight. I appreciate everybody who hit up the super chat and became members and became subscribers. Texans vet, who, by the way, is a woman. My demographics say 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be a dude. So Texans vet, just playing the odds in that one. I apologize, but thank you for becoming a member. Nomad Scott, I appreciate you and being a fan of Trevor as well and of the show. You guys, every time you chime in with a super chat, it means the world to me because you guys know I'm no longer with Fox, so I'm launching my own YouTube channel, Kickin It With Kunkel, launching everything on Instagram and TikTok like crazy. So any support you guys give, follows, retweets, and reposts, and double taps, and all that stuff, I appreciate it. All right. Oh, let's see what Java Clear says. If he is fixable with a good O-line, pay him now and save some money if you don't. That's part of the argument. Like, if you believe in him, pay him because then you get ahead of the curve. There's arguments for all sides except for the Davis Mills camp. That's it. All right. Appreciate you guys. I've got a really fun interview. I think maybe tomorrow. You know, PE guy. He's on Instagram. Johnny Hilbrandt. Great dude. We talked today, and so I recorded that. I'm going to put that on the channel. Just a really fun conversation. PE guy, private equity guy. If you guys know who he is, he's hilarious. So that'll be coming out soon. I've got Austin Corbett, offensive lineman for the Panthers, coming on the show soon as well. Tomorrow is the Astros media luncheon, so I'll be there. I'll be posting a bunch of videos from that. But they got some work to do. They got to figure out their infield. There you go. See, so I'll be at Astros next week or tomorrow. So dial in, tune in, lock in, subscribe, become a member. Like this video, everybody. Share it. Hype it as well. So there's a thing you can hype it, and it gets like better in the algorithm. All right. Appreciate y'all. Peace.